So last week we had a class about tax savings. If you were here, a couple of things I forgot to talk about. Tax savings is a really interesting topic because it's not always about today. And I'll find a lot of accountants, like, hey, we can save you, this much tax today. And sometimes it's about your lifetime tax. And I'd really forgot to mention this last week because I'll have a lot of times I've modeled out, converting money to Roth when maybe you have a slow year in real estate, or maybe it could make sense to do Roth. And I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, but I had a client. They're like, "Hey, I want to save the money today. I want to save the taxes today," and we modeled out doing some Roth conversions that could potentially save like upwards of $500,000 in lifetime tax. So sometimes it just makes sense to run numbers. I know like you have people that are team Roth or team, traditional, and I'm not here to say one is better or one is wrong, but sometimes you just need to run the numbers, and I don't want to pay the government as more than I have to. But today's a cool topic. It's something that we all, even me, I'm not a real estate agent, but something that any self-employed person deals with, which is, commission income, or really just managing cash flow. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. A little bit about me. My name is Travis. I run Wurz Financial Services, and I am a financial planner, but it goes outside of the scope of just helping people set up accounts. Like we do help people set up accounts, we'll help people manage their investments, but also help people create a tax plan and a financial plan. And how can we, like I mentioned, lower our lifetime tax bill and enjoy our life and not work forever, unless you want to work forever. I don't, but maybe you do. But today we're going to talk about cash flow challenges, and we're going to go A to Z. So there might be some things that seem pretty elementary. I want to run through kind of top to bottom, and then I'll give you kind of a process that I use for myself and I've used with clients. So understanding cash flow, types of expenses, and then I'm going to give you a 5-step plan. It's not something that you might take and use on your own. It's very interesting. I get to work with a lot of people. I mean, I've got 300 clients or so that I work with, and everybody has their own unique twist on how they do their budgeting. So there is no one size fits all. I'm sure everybody on this call has their own way of doing their money stuff, how you get paid, how you move things around, and where you pay your bills. But it's finding a system that works and that can help us control the cash flow. So obviously, what are the difficulties that come with commission income, which are pretty obvious. One of them being it's just inconsistent. We might have a month that we're just selling a lot of houses, having a ton of sales. I've had busy times. My business is a little different, but I'll have times where I'm really busy meeting with clients, and then I'm not spending as much time, meeting with new clients. So there's these natural waves, and then you're like, oh, I got to go drum up some business. So go meet with a bunch of new people, and then you're busy making deals, and it's always going to be here. But I find a lot of my clients in real estate are not maybe understand how cash flow works, or they're just so busy with business they're not tracking expenses. Sometimes I've seen unrealistic expectations. This was a kind of a thing a couple of years ago when like we had all kinds of people. I'm gonna go back. All kinds of people coming in real estate, and it was like I don't know if maybe this is just an Ohio thing, but we had people that would like come in the business and they'd be making 100+ thousand their first year. Like, wow, real estate's really easy. And then maybe that didn't keep on as like interest rates and things made things more difficult. Sometimes there's just no plan. I've done this. Like I'm just so busy, I don't create a plan. That goes along with lack of time. So, what is cash flow? I'm sure we all know like what that means, but it's really the cash that comes into your bank from selling houses and the money that comes out, be that paying bills or taxes or how we live. And really, what we want to talk about is how to manage it, to create some kind of plan for inconsistent income or those slow time periods. And this is the biggest thing, really, I think, setting aside cash when business is good. And I've fallen prey to this. Like business is good, like you want to spend money, you want to, whatever. And it's the best time to, maybe stockpile a little bit for the inevitable, for when business slows down, so that we don't have to stress about money. Um, I say income versus profit. Like your income is not all that matters. And the reason that I say that, I've met with some people that make a ton of money. And like I've got a client, he's not a realtor, but like he makes a salary of $800,000 a year. Like, wouldn't that be the dream? But like he really doesn't have a lot to show on it. And I'm not trying to pick on the guy, but I've seen this with some of my real estate clients. I've worked with brokers that just make tons of money, and they haven't set anything aside. It's just always just either going back into the business or back into this or back into that or this, that, and the other. So it's not all about your income. In fact, some of my clients that have retired successfully or have the most money or the most properties or whatever, they didn't make the most money. They just controlled it the best. Having cash reserves, having a plan for their retirement, or if they want to buy properties, or their emergency fund. So you don't need to make the most money to be the most successful. It's really all about how you control the cash flow. And part of that is implementing a tracking system. I did not always, so I didn't talk about this, but my grandfather brought my dad, who brought my brother and I in the business. There was a brief period where I worked with my dad before he retired, and he was terrible at tracking expenses. And there would be a time before tax time where we would just like spread everything out on the table, and we're like looking for expenses, really just messy. I use QuickBooks, self-employed. There's also Mint. I think they got bought by somebody else now. But there are programs and apps that can track your expenses. I don't think that that's the end all be all. I've seen some advertisements on like Instagram and Facebook, and they'll have like a guy creating a budget, and then they'll kind of poo-poo that and say, oh, you need our app. I think the apps are useful. They'll sometimes, like Mint used to like tell you everything you're spending and really break down and open your eyes to like, where is my money going? But I also think that having just like right now, think about, do you know what your monthly business expenses are and your monthly personal expenses are, like on the top of your head? I think that's something to keep track of. And even if you don't know it on the top of your head, to just have it that you can find like very easily. So these are going to also seem kind of obvious, but just as a refresher, there's basically two kinds of expenses we're all going to deal with. We're going to have our fixed expenses that typically don't change from month to month, unless your internet bill keeps going up like mine. They don't change. They could be your business and your personal. That might be broker fees if you have a fixed monthly or annual fee. Could be some kind of advertising. It's an expense that's pretty consistent. We're also going to have personal, like maybe your car payment or your mortgage. These are probably expenses you're not missing. They're there, and you're making these payments. Variable expenses are kind of the opposite. They're going to change from month to month, or season to season. You might spend more time advertising on certain times of the year. Really, it could be both. Could be utilities, or maybe groceries or hobbies. It's really going to depend, but you can budget for these. And a lot of times people say, well, it's hard to budget for variable expenses because they're different. And you can budget for them by just knowing approximately what they are. You may have also heard about non-discretionary and discretionary expenses. These are like the fun things. So a discretionary expense is one that you cannot live without, like food, like I guess food. Food's a hard one because we can't live without food, but like eating out, like where's the line, right? Because do we cook all our food at home, or do we go out? Non-discretionary expenses are mandatory, like taxes and also food. But maybe eating out and hobbies, things that are non-essential, would be a discretionary expense. But knowing kind of what are, I'm not saying these are bad. You have to live your life. I don't want to be the guy that says, "Hey, like live in a box, save all your money, and don't have any fun," because that's not any fun. So it's okay to have fun things and discretionary expenses, just knowing what they are so that we can cut back if and when we need to. Taxes are something that you should be paying your quarterly taxes. You have your federal, you're going to have your self employment taxes. Are you paying your quarterly taxes? Um, there was a time when the fee for not paying quarterly taxes was pretty low. The last time, don't quote me on this, but I think it's around like 8% or something. If you don't pay your quarterly taxes, I'm going to wait till the end of the year and just pay it on whatever. I think it's pretty high. I think it's like 8% or so. So I was one of these people. I used to just wait till the end of the year, and I do pay my quarterly taxes now. So, setting aside cash for taxes are regular. Are you doing that? This was a hot topic last week or 2 weeks ago. I've talked about setting up an S corporation and running payroll, which is something apparently Michigan and California folks, they don't like you doing this. But if you live in Ohio, or somebody said they were in Kentucky, um, this is a tax saving strategy. However, it can help automate your cash flow. I do this personally. I have clients that do this that are realtors in Ohio, because they'll automatically withhold taxes and flow cash every month. So every month you're withholding taxes. Every month you're sticking a paycheck in your bank account per se, and it helps to automate. Yeah, I know the broker's license in Michigan. Right, we talked about that um, last week because I have these classes set up for CE approval for Ohio. You don't need a broker's license in Ohio to do an S corp, but in Michigan, they I guess you do. And
Yeah, we
and
talked about that last week, Julie. We had this whole conversation
yeah,
and
they made me look really
like,
bad.
what? I've never heard that before. I was like, I promise you, you can get away with it for like a minute. And then when they find out you're out, you got to go back to depositing into your regular accounts.
Yeah. So I'm not, to be honest with you, I need to do a little digging. I'm not sure what but Michigan, for now, and California, you're kind of out for that. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So planning for the best and also planning for the worst. Do you have a best and worst case scenario for how you're going to, cash flow? Like when business is booming, I am going to save, like if I make over this amount, like I'm going to just put that all away for when, business slows down. Or do you have a cash flow for when business slows down? Like where am I going to get money? Like if I need to pull 50 grand because business is slow and my roof is leaking or something, where am I going to pull this money from? What expenses, if things are really slow, what expenses can be pulled back in the business and personal? And how much do we need to keep in the bank, in our personal bank, in our business bank? And we're going to talk about that in our 5 steps in a second. So this is our manage your commission income like a top agent. Um, I don't know that like I said, it's a system that works for me, but it's customizable. It's not something that there's no cookie cutter system, but there's a clear theme that you kind of don't want to do ish and do want to do. I find a lot of clients. I've done this. Your checks go into your personal bank, and from your personal bank, you pay your personal expenses, you pay your business expenses, and you pay your taxes. There's really nothing wrong with this. My dad was in the business. He retired 35 years and he did this his whole career and he was successful at it. But I think there is a better way of budgeting. So this is fine. I think there's nothing wrong with this as long as you're like saving money for taxes and saving money for your retirement and that kind of thing. But where I want to get people is setting up either a separate bank account or a business bank account. Um, if you're in Michigan, you can't have an LLC, but you could still have a separate bank account that you're getting paid into to just separate. Okay, I got my checks; they're coming into my, you know, designated bank account or my business bank. That's where I'm paying all my business expenses. Makes it really easy to track your expenses because everything is just in one bank as a credit card. You have one card or one bank that all of your business expenses run through. And then from here, pushing what you need to your personal bank to pay for your personal expenses. And also having a tax account. I think it is really important to have a separate account specifically for taxes because you might have a month where you are just absolutely killing it in business and you have 6 months worth of income in a month. And if you're not proactive about setting aside taxes, you might, oh, I'm going to pay my quarterlies that my accountant gave me and I've got a bunch of money left over. But you will probably owe more, for that year maybe. So having a separate account, be it another bank account or um, Schwab has I work with Charles Schwab. They have a money market that pays 5%. And I've used that as my tax account often because I bank with Fifth Third and they don't give me 5% on my bank. And this might seem confusing to a second, but this is really where I like to get my client. This is a process that I use personally, where all of your checks go into a business bank or a separate bank account, for your business that you pay your business expenses. And from here, we've really added on. You still have, okay, how much am I going to pull into my personal bank and my tax account? But also having a rainy day fund. Do you have, I mean, I would love to get all of my clients that are self-employed to have 20, 30, 40,000 in an account that is liquid that they can get to at any day with no penalties, very quickly. Hopefully not, but something happens or we just need to bridge some cash flow. I've had this happen where clients don't have a rainy day fund and they'll say, well, I'm moving or I want to take advantage of a property that's a really good deal. And the only option is to take it out of their retirement accounts. And their bank sometimes will tell them, they'll say, well, you know, if you take it out, we'll be able to like finance the property and you put the money back in 60 days. It just to avoid the penalty and it just never happens. So we'll talk about that too. And investments, be they retirement or some kind of long-term investments for you in the future, be it a retirement account or even just a non-retirement investment. So we're talking about buckets. I think that having designated buckets, not just having everything go into one big account. Do you want me to admit these people? I see somebody in the waiting room. Do you want me to admit
I
them
got
or? Okay, you're the best. There's I like to split them up, having a short-term bucket, having medium-term buckets, and long-term buckets. And ultimately, you're going to find a system that works best for you and something that is repeatable. Like if there's some complicated system that's the best in the world, but you don't like it and it's complicated, it's just not going to work. So finding a system that works for you that you can repeat. I would classify a short-term money bucket as anything that's less than 12 months. These would be taxes, your business account, your personal account that you're using for paying expenses. Maybe an emergency fund for income fluctuations. You want it to be liquid, you want it to be accessible, and you don't want it to be in something that's risky, right? Like you don't want to, hey, I'm gonna put my tax money in some stock, and then that stock crashes, and then the IRS is knocking on your door. Like that's a bad idea. We want to keep your short-term buckets accessible, liquid, that we can get to. Now, we all are going to have medium-term buckets, money that we don't really need today, but we really, maybe don't want to classify it as this is my my 20-year money, 30-year money, 15-year money, money that, we can access in case of emergency or if we have a slow year or something, but we don't need it now. This could be, uh, I think it should be accessible, and it really depending on how aggressive or conservative, it probably should be conservative. This is like your 1 to 5 year money. It could be an emergency fund. Like, hey, I've got this money that I don't I don't need today for my business expenses, but I want to keep it. I want to keep it accessible. And ultimately, it's important to have long-term buckets. And long-term buckets can be scary for people because they don't. It's hard to think about putting money away for 20 years, especially in a time right now because everything seems to be about the now. My dad used to say, "Now is now, and that's all it now is," or something like that. Once you say now, it's gone. I always thought that was kind of dumb, um, but we live in the now, and a lot of people I work with, they're like, "I don't want to plan for retirement. Like, I want to enjoy life. What if I die tomorrow?" And that is true. But what if you live in? We had a client that was 103, so like we just don't know. And there is some kind of middle ground, right? Like we can't just spend all of our money, but we also can't live in a box and just save all of our money because that's just not any fun. So, some kind of middle ground where, we are planning for retirement, even if have rental properties, or I think it's still important to have investments for your retirement. This is your 5+ year money, your money that can be more aggressive, because it's like, hey, I want to potentially grow this money. I don't need this money. Let's try to grow this for the long term. So this is I'm going to run you through a 5-step plan that I kind of go by to determine how much money do I leave in how much money do I leave for taxes. And this is the first one I think that everybody should forecast your income. Maybe this is something that you do every year. Maybe it's something you do every quarter, kind of depending on business. But I think that you should set 3 numbers. I think you should look back at the last few years, or if you're new in the business, maybe ask some of your peers. But set a realistic goal. And this is where, like, if things go normally, I'm gonna hit around this number. Okay, I made 100,000 the last 3 years on average, so this is my average. I think you should set a high goal. Like maybe everybody I sold a house to sends me their neighbor. you know? You set it like, what if I just have all kinds of referrals and business just, it's the right time at the right place kind of business. Things are coming in. And I think you should set a low goal. What would be, okay, like maybe 100,000. If I have a really good year, maybe it's 200,000. Or, what if things really slow down and I only make 50? What would I need to do? So, having those numbers on what you could hit as a bare minimum, what's your high goal, and some kind of realistic, this is what I want to hit. Setting, make it reasonable. I find a lot of people, I mentioned this earlier, where, I like big goals. I'm not saying to not set big goals, but set reasonable goals so we can plan. Maybe if you expect to, gross 180,000, then your monthly income would be around 15,000. Now it's not always going to be 15,000 a month, right? Like it could be 30,000 one month and 2,000 the next month. You can look at your pipeline, you can look at your referral sources, you can look at the market trend, but try to make some kind of forecast for the coming year. You could do it now for the next 12 months. And the next thing would be your expenses. What we got? Somebody had a chat here. Oh, maybe not. Okay. Forecasting your expenses, be that your business, your personal, and your taxes and your savings. This is the forgotten one. Like it's easy to look at our business expenses and our personal, sometimes taxes, but making your savings part of your expenses. So we want to look at, add up all of your fixed expenses and your variable expenses and find out what that is a month. It's not going to, might not be the same every month. Maybe you're like, well, Travis, I spend more in, the winter or more in the summer. You know, find out what you pay for the year. Maybe look at the last 12 months and say, okay, like my business expenses were X, Y, Z, and make that a monthly number. And do the same with your personal. Like, what are your monthly average personal expenses? You can even go in and look at which of those are discretionary, meaning which of those expenses could we cut? Like eating out is an easy one, or maybe there's some business expenses you're advertising that like I could cut that back if I absolutely had to. Knowing, do you know what tax bracket you will be in, so you can set aside money for taxes, and how much will you pay, how much will you save each month if business goes as expected? What is your saving expense? And I call it an expense because I, I've I used to make this joke. I said, have you ever not made your mortgage payment or your car payment? Hey, business isn't very good. I'm bank. Um, I'm gonna stop paying my mortgage payment for a couple months. Typically, we don't. You might, but they don't like that. So, making our savings an expense. So maybe your monthly income, you're like, okay, I'm going to forecast my monthly income to be 10,000. Now, obviously, that's going to fluctuate. My business expenses are 1,500 a month on average, or about 15%, and my personal expenses are 3,500 a month. And I'm going to think my, average tax rate or my effective tax rate is 20%, and I'm going to save, something like this where we have goals set up. And obviously things are going to change and I'll get to that. But what a month our business, our personal, our taxes and our savings as a number are. From here we can set up the buckets. We want to have a business account or another account, notated for their business, and a personal account. Most of us already probably have a personal account. At least I hope so. Uh, these are going to be short-term buckets. We're using this money. This is money that money goes in, money comes out. And also, I think it's important to have a separate tax bucket or tax account. At a minimum, I think these three, having a business account, personal account, and a tax account, is super useful. From here, having a rainy day account, having something that we can lean on if business goes bad, or if things just slow down, or something happens, emergency happens. And then also having a long-term bucket. We got our short-term, our medium-term, and our long-term buckets. Setting these up, if that's all the same bank, and knowing where they are, doesn't have to be super complicated. Our business account, we talked a little bit about this, but having an account just where you pay business, it's not a rainy day fund. And that's really the most important thing. It's not an emergency fund. If you need money for something, this is not where you're going to be pulling emergency funds from. Now, how much money do we need to leave here is really going to be what you're comfortable with. The rule of thumb is typically 3 to 6 months. If you're comfortable with 3 months, so maybe that's 3 months ahead, or maybe it's 6 months. You could start at 6 months. I'm going to build these up to 6 months, and hopefully hopefully that will cover the fluctuations. Maybe 6 months is too much, and you say, oh, I'm gonna drop it down a little bit. Same thing with the personal. People ask me, how much money should I leave in my bank? I think having 3 to 6 months of your personal expenses is a good idea. If you have 6 months ahead, you've got 6 months of personal and business expenses on tap that you could technically live off of for 6 months, and you wouldn't have to make any money. The tax account is really going to be as we get paid. This isn't something where we want to have 6 months or this amount, but as we get paid, we can look back at last year's taxes. Okay, my average tax rate was X. So every time I get paid, I'm going to take 15% or 20% and put it in this account. Um, the account should be used to only pay taxes. It's okay if you put too much here because then at the end of the year you might still owe some money. It's not an emergency fund. It should be kept accessible, but you don't want to be pulling money. This should be money that we're actively putting aside specifically for our taxes. Kind of the same way with a rainy day fund. It's regularly funded, so we have a cash cushion for rainy day. If you already have 3 to 6 months in your personal and your business accounts, um, this could be invested. This is where the system is going to be different for certain people. I meet some folks and they've got 6 months in their business account, 6 months in their personal account, and they don't feel like they need more money, in cash. So maybe they set up an account like this and they want to invest it. Well, I really don't think I need this money, so I want to invest it conservatively. Or you just want to keep it in cash, so you could keep it in a money market or cash account. And the home run is really the investment accounts. And I say that because back to what I said about having something to show for, like we can make all the money we want to make, but if we're not saving any money, it's kind of like in my mind, not what's the point, but you have to be putting some money aside. Even if you're not into investing in the stock market, if you're like, hey, I'm into rentals or yada yada, like there has to be some some path to retirement or being able to work optional. Could be a combination of retirement accounts and non-retirement accounts that we could use uh, for purchasing properties, yada yada. Um, these accounts really should not be accessed. They should be our long term. We should already be having money in our bank, having money in our emergency fund. These should be our long term money. But we should be regularly adding money to build wealth and a passive income source. Uh, so setting up the system, which is okay. Now we've got our accounts set up. This is my business and my personal. How do I get a process set up to I'm turning the water on. Where is that water going? So how much do you allocate to each account monthly? How do you build up certain accounts, and what are your goals? So I'll give you an example. Maybe your business expenses are 1,500, your personal expenses are 3,500, and your effective tax rate is 20%. Make it easy numbers. And maybe you're like, I'm going to try to save $2,000 a month. I'm really serious about retiring. I want to. That's my savings goal. You want this to be a number that you can do comfortably, and you can set different targets for that too. Now maybe based on your income is going to depend how we fund these accounts. So in that example, oops, I'm gonna go back. Okay, if our business expenses are 1,500, well, 6 months would be okay 9,000. So we want to shoot to have at least maybe $9,000 in our business account, and 6 months of 3,500 is 2,100. We want to have 2,100 or 21,000 in our personal account, and every time we get paid, we're taking 20%, putting it in our tax account and our rainy day account. Maybe our goal is 6 months of our total expenses. So we want to take. I want to have 30,000 in an account that I can lean on if I have to, and we also want to save maybe X amount for our retirement. But it's not going to always be cookie cutter. So like this is easy to look at and say, wow, like if I had a fixed salary, life would be really nice. but it's not going to be like that. And this is where the budget gets difficult when our income fluctuates because we have to plan for the best and the worst, and that could all be in the same year. We could start off really slow and end the year really strong. So having the bucket set up and a plan for how do we flow the cash when things are good and when things are slow. When business is booming, I encourage my clients to build up and fund their accounts to their goals. So, okay, if our personal and our business expenses, our business accounts are running low, we want to first build up our personal and build up our business expenses. Once you've got those funded, um, maybe start funding your emergency fund. Maybe your business account is funded, your personal account is funded to your goal, and you've got 20, 30 grand in your emergency fund. What do you do with the money then? Do you spend it, or maybe then you consider saving it for your long-term investments? Hey, business is really good. I've got 6 months on tap. Let's just stash the cash. What do we do when business is slow? Hopefully, we have been setting aside money so we have 3 to 6 months that we can survive. And if worse comes to worse, you can pull from your rainy day account. There's really, I mean, in a optimal scenario, you would have a year of of expenses that you could technically live off of between your business, your personal, and your rainy day fund. And when business returns, we're going to build those accounts back. So there's always going to be this ebb and this flow. Maybe business is booming. You got a $15,000 check. Um, our business bank is, and this is just a kind of a dumb example. But how do we split up this $15,000 check? Well, maybe we only have 2,000 in our business account, so we're going to leave 5 of it there. And we only have 8,000 in their personal, so we're going to take another 5 there. We want to take a percentage of that and put it away for taxes. So we have 7,000 in our tax account. We're going to take 2,000 and put it aside for taxes. And maybe the difference we're splitting between our rainy day fund and our investments. This is kind of just upon discretion. There's no rule of thumb here. Maybe business is booming and we've got our business account is where we want it, our personal account is where we want it, and our rainy day fund is where we want it. We still want to put aside money for taxes, and then maybe we save the rest for our long-term investments. Planning for the slow. If worse comes to worse, like I mentioned a few times, this is where we have the rainy day account, and we've hopefully been putting the money aside. So business is slow. We have no check with a sad face. We have the money hopefully in our business, in our personal account, and we've already been putting money aside for taxes. So there's really nothing to stress about. It used to feel like I was working for the government the first 4 months of the year. When I didn't used to pay quarterly taxes because I would be, I'm saving so much money, and then in January it's feels like all the money I'm making is just going to pay taxes. So there isn't that feeling because we've been putting money aside. Maybe business is really slow. I don't know, where are these checks at? We're in a 2008 crisis or something, and the business bank is empty. This would be a pretty bad scenario. And this would be a situation where we've got this money that we've funded for emergencies that we can use to, if we needed to, pay our taxes, our personal expenses, and business. And hopefully not dive into our retirement. So this is kind of a bonus because long-term retirement accounts, they don't have to be retirement accounts. I'm a really big fan of non-retirement investment accounts because they're accessible. I'm not saying that you should put all your money in it. I think that there's definitely benefits of actual retirement accounts, but I like to have access to some of my money, but I don't want it to sit in cash. So, maybe that's some medium term money. I don't need the money now, but I don't want to lock it away. You can set up they call it a brokerage account or a TOD or an individual. They go by a few different names that you can buy and sell investments. There was probably something supposed to be after potentially, like potentially grow your money. But the key is accessibility. If you're 30 or 40 and you don't want to, put this money away until you're 59 and a half, when you can access retirement funds, this is a place that you can set up a bucket and invest the money, but keep it accessible. So that's kind of it. A little bit shorter than the last time, but I'm sure you don't want to hear me, talk for forever. So if anybody has any questions, I know there was something about um, our Michigan nightmare, but how about you, Nicole? You got any questions?
No, not really. I mean, I think that it's, I feel like it's hard, because this business is so up and down, like you said, like,
Hmm.
like a I have like 7 closings in May, and then I might not have any until July or August, or you never know. So it's like trying to prepare yourself for what happens if, and it's scary. So I think, the more that you can kind of stretch, and I mean, I last year was the first year that I didn't, every check I was really diligent about taking. As soon as it hit my account, I'd send 30% to my savings account every single time. And last year was the first year I didn't do that. And I panicked. Like, it's, tax season, and I also screwed up big time with my taxes. I accidentally paid my quarterlies all to the state of Michigan and not to the IRS. So I totally screwed that up. So I'll be paying for that later. Um, note to self, don't do that. So, like, I just clearly wasn't paying attention to what things were happening. So this year I'm trying to be like more structured. Like, I already went through, and I did this as soon as I realized how bad I screwed up for last year with the payments and all that. I went through, added up all my commissions from January to the day, and then put 30% of all that money into my savings account, so I have it. So I'm looking, and I don't know, maybe you have a recommendation of kind of moving that money to a high yield savings account. What do you have, like, a preference? Is there one that you think is the best for that?
So I'm kind of biased a little bit because we set up accounts with Charles Schwab. So that's where we manage accounts for our clients, and that's where I have my own investments. They have a money market fund that pays 5.17 and it's liquid. So I have been drawn to that because I've used this for years. Even when rates were low, like 5 years ago or so, I mean, it was paying like 2.83%, and then it was paying up to like 5.6 when rates were like peaked. So, uh, you know, CDs are popular, um, but in my mind, the Schwab money market, and every institution has their own money market fund, but it's always paid like just a smidge below CD rates. So when I'm thinking about this, I'm like, okay, I can get 5.2 on a CD, or I can get 5.1 and have it liquid. I like that. I find a lot of times the banks, they'll give you like this promo. I hate this. They'll give you some promo bullcrap. Hey, we'll give you like 5%. It feels like my gas bill, because you do this with your gas bill. They'll give you like, hey, we'll give you this deal, and then if you don't pay attention, it goes way up. So I've seen this with banks where they'll give you like this magical rate, and then it's either for new customers. So I'm like, wait, like I'm a customer at Fifth Third, but you're not going to give me the rate only if I'm new,
Right.
or yeah, or it's like some temporary. So I'm not
And when
saying.
you
Go ahead.
Well, I have a question. So when you say like, we're like, you're talking to a newbie over here. Okay. So like, when you say these accounts are liquid, does that mean like I can take that money out at any time? Cause I know,
Hmm.
like, I have had clients who have had money in high yield savings accounts, and they could not withdraw their money. It was a limit per day. It
Yeah.
was, they had to transfer from one bank to another. It was like a
You do have to transfer
absolute
it, but
nightmare.
it's liquid. So so when we set up accounts with Charles Schwab, you can set up any kind of account under the sun, a retirement account, or your bank account is an individual account. So it's very similar to a bank account, being that you can buy things like a money market or even investments or whatnot. So like I have one for myself. It's just a Travis Wirtz individual, and I'm in the Schwab money market now. If I needed money, I can transfer it to my personal bank in 3 days. So
Is
that's the
there any like fees associated with stuff like that, like
mm-mm.
transferring or anything?
No. And typically how I didn't mention this last class, but how I get paid is I help people manage money. I typically make a 1% annual fee to help people manage their investments. I've set up these accounts and I don't charge a fee because I'm not managing the money. So there could be, I mean, if you set it up with somebody and they were charging a fee, but I'm happy to set up an account like this. It's, it's like if it's going to be in cash, you might as well have it in cash and like make, put, some money. I've set up an account, you link it to your bank. You can get checks on it technically. I don't typically like to do that. Just because it's so easy. Unless you're like, hey, I need the money in, let's see, an hour. That would be bad. But
Yeah,
usually I tell
I wouldn't
people if
need
you
it
need the
like that.
money, let me know like a week before, and then it'll be in your bank in 3 days. So that is the only thing to be. But you can wire it too. I've had when I personally when I moved, we just wired it to the title company, and that way I didn't have to like jump to my bank and then jump there. So it's nice.
Yeah, we've had like I know I've had issues, Julie has too, with like clients who've had have money in like these certain savings accounts. And I had one who we were at the closing table and he was like, "Oh, here's my bank account and my routing number. You can just take the money." And they were like, "Nope, like you have to wire it to us." And somehow he missed the email that explained all of this to him from the lender. But they wouldn't allow him to transfer the money. They had to transfer it from here to Wells Fargo. And of course, there's no Wells Fargo in Michigan. The closest one is Chicago. So he would have had to go all the way to Chicago to get the money. It was a whole
Oh, to get like a
thing.
certified bank check or something on the
Yeah.
spot?
They were only going to allow him to take out 5,000 a day. It was a mess. And he needed like $80,000. It was a whole
Yeah,
mess. We got it figured out.
that's
It took a week longer to close, but it was a disaster. So I'm like very nervous about these accounts, but I know, I just want to make things work best.
yeah.
Like if
Did
I
they
have money
change
sitting in the
something?
account,
So I moved in 2022, and maybe it was just because like okay yourself like they made me wire the money way in advance. Like I remember I wired the money like 2 or 3 weeks before we sat
oh,
at the
that's,
closing table.
yeah, we don't do that here.
Yeah, well,
I
in my
usually
mind,
say
I'm
it,
like, so I
I
just
usually
had a
tell
client that
everybody
said,
a
hey,
day before.
I just had a client that said, hey, I'm gonna need some money. I'm buying a house. I said, well, how much? I said, well, we're not gonna know until like we close. So that was new for me because I'm
Hmm.
used to having a number. Okay, this is the number. Is there typically a number
Yeah,
that
like you could get an estimate. I mean, the lender and everybody, the title and lender will have like a solid estimate on what it's going to be, but then you won't have the exact number till a couple days before. So
okay.
I always tell people wire the money at least 24 hours beforehand so you know it's there. But I mean, you could wire the money anytime. You could wire over and then they'll just reimburse you the rest back if you don't. But at least the money's there and you don't have to worry about it sitting in funding. So
Yeah.
um, does anybody else have any other questions? I kind of took that all up with this like high yield savings thing question. So, does anybody else have any other questions about anything that Travis was talking about?
So I don't have questions, just kind of an observation that I was thinking about when we talk about the business bucket, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, because in this industry, we do advertising typically on our own. Like I need new business. So considering like paid lead sources, right? So I guess it got me to thinking about what that should be. It's almost like what amount of money should be held in that business bucket and for what reason? Are we talking about things like that? Or like, what would be the reason to hold money there and, for what purposes? And
Yeah,
then maybe it's better to do that. And you're like, okay, this is how much I have to work with. And it helps you with your mindset about where to spend money on your business, if that makes sense.
yeah, I like to keep any expenses that I can write off on my taxes. So, one of the forgotten ones is health insurance because you can write off your health insurance premiums. So I
Ah,
just recently switched those to because I'm like, my accountant
uh-huh.
says, hey, do you have your health insurance premiums? So I had to go back and like dig through my personal, which has like, all Amazon and Chipotle and all that stuff on there. So yeah, having it, the purpose really is to make it easy to track expenses. I think, if anything you're gonna write off on your tax, like I'm gonna write off advertising, I'm gonna write off, my health insurance, I'm gonna write off my, you know, car, whatever that you're gonna write off on your taxes, having that in, now I still do have a few, like I actually just caught one this morning. I have like a Google that's going through my personal and that's okay. It just makes it harder to track. I'm gonna try to switch that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so anything paid, but business expense, I usually track it on a credit card because that's usually, but yeah, sometimes there's checks. I know it's a
I do
whole,
that too. Yeah, so
a
I'll
whole
have a
thing.
credit card that just gets paid like through that
Do
bank
that,
account
through that bank account.
then.
Yeah, it's
And
hard. I tell a lot of my new agents who come in, like, first things first, like set up a business bank account and a business credit card, because
Mm.
my first year I didn't do that and it was such a pain. So now I have everything going through that business credit card. Obviously, there's still some stuff like there's Venmos and there's, stuff that is separate. And so I do have to like be careful and track that and make sure I go back and look at all that. But there's definitely a lot of stuff that gets, paid separately. But if you can kind of keep it all as much possible, lumped into one account or one credit card or whatever, it is such a lifesaver come the end of the year.
Tax season, yeah.
I keep track on an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, I have my personal expenses listed out and I have my business expenses listed out just so I know like these are my, this is what it costs me to run my life and my business. And it also helps over time because as you maybe add some expenses, you might not even realize you're adding, and then, oh shoot, like my business's expenses are $1,000 a month more now.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
I go through weekly. I mean, I have QuickBooks Self-Employed. I have a reminder every Friday. I go through and and it remembers too. So it'll remember certain things, which is really nice. And that way you're not going to the end of the year and thinking back, okay, like what, because in your bank it'll say, check. You're like, oh God, like what was this check for, right?
Right.
Let
My
me,
my favorite thing about QuickBooks is how it disconnects my credit cards all the time. And it is literally the bane of my existence because I have to, if I don't go in, like I was really bad last year because I started a new team, I started all this stuff. My personal expenses and everything just kind of went out the window. And I went back in to review things for taxes, and like two of my credit cards were not connected anymore. And, they don't always feed back in. So I had to print out all of my statements and all of my stuff and reconcile. It was awful. I don't even
that
think I
stinks.
finished it, to be honest. I don't even think I finished it.
I've had
It's
good
like
luck.
so much.
I have a Capital One credit card I use for business, and I had good luck with that. I do have one community bank that I used to use because now everything's with business, so I didn't. But like in prior years, it would always get disconnected and I have to go in and reconnect it every time, and that's kind of a pain. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's awful. That's my only issue with QuickBooks is that it's not dependable on keeping things connected. I did like Mint too. I did have Mint. You mentioned that before.
hmm
So I do remember somebody did acquire them and I don't remember who it was, but somebody bought them. Um, but I did like Mint. And it kept everything categorized and I love that.
they got Credit Karma, I think, bought them or something like that.
Maybe. I don't know,
And
but I did like that account. We had that, my ex-husband and I had that as an account, so we could really see where like, I loved it had like a pie chart of like how your money was divided up over the month. So you could see like, okay, we went out way too many times this month because the entertainment block was like half the pie. It's like,
I've heard of people, they're like, I don't want to go in my bank account because I just don't want to know how much is in there. And I've never really felt, I felt that way about Mint though, because it'll say, I'm afraid to look, right? Because it'll tell you like, hey, you spent this much on Amazon.
yeah,
By
I
the
can't
way,
talk about Amazon.
speaking about Amazon,
Spot.
they have a credit card that give you 5% cash back on all your Amazon purchases. It's like the only vendor specific credit card I've ever
Oh,
used.
is it the Amazon card?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the Amazon card. Everything I buy goes on the Amazon card, because you
Yeah.
get the discount.
It's like 5% off everything, right? I feel like I'm at
I
Kohl's.
have no idea, but I bought it. You know why I got it? Because my daughter wanted AirPods for Christmas one year, and they had, if I bought it with a credit card, I got it. They were like $200 headphones, and I got them for $99 if I signed up for the credit card. So I was like, well, why not? So I bought, that's how I ended up with them. And then I just put every Amazon, that's like the only card. And my daughter, it's a Chase card. So I actually let my daughter use the card. Like that's the credit card she gets to use when she like goes to dinner with her friends or goes to the store or whatever. She uses that card. So, but anyway, yeah, I think to be honest, I don't even know. I think it's just the cash back. I don't think it's points or anything like that. So I just pay the bill. To be honest, I don't even, it's auto pay. I don't even know
Yeah,
what's on.
that's the best way to do it. But yeah, they give you 5%, which is pretty strong. And then if you're like me, I'm gonna drive 30 minutes to the store to get, a rubber band. I'll just order it on Amazon or so.
My Amazon cart is full right now. It's always
Anyway.
full every day. We got new things coming. If I go a week without an Amazon package, we're doing good.
But yeah, I think are we on here not next week, but I think in 2 weeks or 2 weeks or 3 weeks
Yeah,
from
you're
now.
back on the 28th. You're back. I don't know. I don't have in my calendar what your topic is, but you're coming back on the 28th for the
Yeah,
next one.
and I appreciate everybody's time here. It means a lot, and hopefully you walk away with some things to think about. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. And then do you want to just put in the chat really quick? Like if somebody wants to get a hold of you, if you'll just put your info in the chat, that would be awesome.
Yeah, the last one I had had like a QR code.
Darla, I know you're listening in. If you can grab his link out of there and we could put that in the newsletter.
Oh, actually, here I can grab. I put my email. That's a good way to reach me. And then before we get out of here, I'll post
Oh,
this.
look, Darla already put it in here. Understanding. Oh, wait, that's for
The
next week.
28th is retirement planning.
Okay.
Retirement planning. Yes, you're
Yeah.
right. And then
Mhm.
next week we have Robin Liberty coming on. She's going to be talking about understanding personalities and how to use them to build your business. That'll be a good one too. So Travis, if you want to come on, it'll be a good one for hiring people. But we'll put your information in our newsletter too that goes out.
Okay, here, give me. Okay, yeah, I have a calendar link. I'll put in here if that helps. Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds fun. I'm gonna be out of town, but I can listen in on one of these. I think next
Well,
week.
we can't stream live anymore, so it'll be on.
Oh, darn.
It'll be on YouTube. Don't worry. All right. Well,
Can't you
everybody,
stream live anymore?
they took it away. You can
Really?
stream to, yeah, I can stream to like my personal page and I can stream.
Not through groups or.
Nope. I was telling them before we got on, I was trying to see how to do it, and you can do it. It's just 47 steps and like a 12-minute video on how to.
Why did they do that?
Who knows? I think it was Facebook changed something. You can't use an API. I don't ask me what API means. I have no clue. But you can't use an API anymore. So now you have to go through 47 steps to get your stuff to stream live. You have to go through like a third party thing to be able to do it, basically. So. All right. Well, we will see you guys all next week. Next week will be a great one. If anyone, I mean, you don't even have to use it for hiring people. It's great for like personalities, for, you can kind of do it with all kinds of stuff. So it's going to be really good. So join us next week. And we'll be back here same time. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Guys.